Jenee, without further ado, welcome to Vibrant.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? All right, good morning. I am really honored to be here with you all today. I can already tell it's like a really amazing group of people. I feel super honored to even be here and be able to talk about Vibrant through the lens of the Shine Mural Festival and kind of some of my own personal experiences. So I'm going to try to get through all of these things in about 20 minutes, but we're going to talk a little bit about what the Shine Mural Festival is, how it's added vibrancy to the city of St. Pete, why having a vibrant city matters. I'm going to tell a little personal story about how I got here in the first place, and then I'm going to give you the easiest call to action of all time. So what is the Shine Mural Festival? So Shine is really about illuminating the power of art in public spaces. So, and even Vibrant is in our mission statement of what we do, but essentially every October we're producing somewhere between 16 and 20 new murals throughout the art districts of St. Petersburg. We're produced by the St. Petersburg Arts Alliance, and so far we've created about 168 murals so far throughout St. Pete. This October will be our 10th anniversary, and I'm going to shamelessly plug that again at the end. Woo, right? Really, really incredible that we've been doing this for 10 years. And I really encourage everybody to grab one of those save the date cards that are kind of scattered throughout so you can come out in October and watch this actually happen in real life. But I want to talk about some of the things that I think make Shine really vibrant, because there's a lot of other mural programs throughout the world, throughout the nation. There's a lot of other festivals now that have kind of popped up over the last 10 years, but there's some things that I think set Shine apart and make it a really, really special event. And one of those things, and I think kind of the cornerstone of Shine, is really celebrating art for the sake of art, right? So it's kind of an unusual and a special opportunity for an artist to be able to have full creative expression in a public space without that art being dictated by a sponsor, by a property owner, by organizers. They truly get to have a place in the city to create their own artwork, which is really powerful for a lot of artists. And for what it can do for our community, right? You look around St. Pete, if you're familiar with the murals here, you see the diversity of art that exists here. What I've learned doing this work over the last 7 years that I've been officially involved is I've talked to a lot of other cities that are interested in having a mural festival or having a program in their own cities and ask a lot of questions, and I realized that there's a lot of cities that have so many barriers to being able to create art the way that we create art here. There's so many approvals that are needed. There's so many permits that are needed. Even on private property, it has to be approved by, city council. And it makes it really prohibitive for people to be able to do what we've been able to do here in St. Pete. So shout out to the city of St. Pete for that, because we really have an incredible outdoor gallery here. Shine is one piece of that, but it's a really, really special thing that we've been able to do in St. Pete. Along with that is thinking about Shine as a very artist-centric festival because of that reason. Again, in these conversations that I have with other cities that are interested in how we do what we do, I've realized that there's different ways to do this, and a lot of times I think people go what could be considered maybe the path of least resistance in terms of appeasing property owners or sponsors. It's really difficult to continue to prioritize the artist's creative expression in these public spaces and to continue to fight for that like we've done over the years so that that part doesn't lose its artistic integrity. We fought really hard to do that and are still fighting really hard to do that, and I will say in a post-COVID world, it's even harder than ever before. But we've been able to do that through Shine, and I think that that's really important. On top of that, we're kind of known for our hospitality for artists, too. So people get to be a part of the festival, and they are treated with so much care from start to finish. They are fed well, they're, flown in. We take care of everything that we can possibly take care of so they can just show up and create amazing art for St. Pete. We always have a combination of local, national, and international artists. Again, there's different ways of doing this. This is the sort of system that we found that I think is really effective, that benefits all of us. Again, but that's kind of unique. Not everybody does that. Some are purely local, some are purely visiting artists. We kind of have a pretty even balance of both. Looking for a diversity of styles and voices. We've kind of already talked about this a little bit, but really celebrating that diversity in the art form is kind of what helps make St. Pete so vibrant in this art. Our murals are not required to be reflective of the history of St. Pete. They're not required to be, reflect the local flora and fauna. They're not all beach scenes. I tried desperately to not have beach scenes. So again, that's really unusual, and it's a continual fight with, I don't want to say fight, maybe that's too aggressive, but advocating for artists' creative expression beyond maybe what might be advertising for your business or branding for the city, anything like that. I think we've done a good job of trying to honor graffiti and the culture of street art within what we're doing. If it weren't for graffiti, we wouldn't have mural festivals, we wouldn't have mural programs. Like, somebody had to go out there first and do stuff illegally before people were like, oh, that's actually really cool, we should pay you to do that. And I think that that's gone a long way for us too in being able to kind of build credibility within the art community as well. And recognizing that a lot of the artists that we've had the privilege of working with started as graffiti writers, and they've over time refined their styles and are now, world-renowned artists in many ways, and that deserves to be acknowledged and credited. The last thing I'll say is we try really hard to expand the outdoor gallery every year. So again, other festivals or programs may be reusing the same walls over and over again. We're always trying to add to the gallery and get as many new businesses involved, as many new properties involved as we can to kind of spread the love. This is just a little before and after, because I'm a sucker for a before and after. But thinking about vibrancy, I mean, you just can see visually what an impact it has to be able to add a mural to a property. This was last year, Max Sansing from Chicago at the Trinity Lutheran Church. A pretty clear transformation here. I think it's amazing. So why does having a vibrant city matter? So I'm going to reference a lot this book, For the Love of Cities, by Peter Kageyama. I don't know if you're familiar with Peter. He's a local author. I highly recommend that book, and I'm going to talk more about it in a minute. But a lot of the things that I'm going to share in this section are sort of inspired by or directly from his concepts in For the Love of Cities. But essentially the idea is that we are all in a relationship with our city, right? You can think about it even in terms of a romantic relationship, if you will, where we're looking to create love for our cities, right? And there's different ways of doing that, but what I've experienced through Shine is that the murals are such a great opportunity to create an emotional connection with a space or a place and overall with your experience of St. Pete. And maybe it's just a little connection, right? Just a little moment where you're like, oh, that's cool, but it adds up over time. And the reason why that's important is because when you have emotionally connected citizens, they're more likely to be civically engaged. What does that mean? We know that people that are more emotionally connected to where they live are more likely to vote in their local elections. They're more likely to volunteer at a local charity. They're more likely to donate to a cause. They're more likely to plant a tree. All the things that you kind of want in a citizen of your city, right, are going to come from people that are more emotionally invested in where they live. Shout out to Jenee Priebe. So For the Love of Cities, one of the big concepts, too, that he talks about in this book is this idea of co-creators, which I think is a really, really beautiful idea. So to sort of set the foundation for it, really co-creators are building off of an existing infrastructure for a city, right? So when we think about what makes a city lovable, we're not really thinking about like, oh, the water treatment plants are working well and the sewage lines are functional, like the roads don't have potholes. Those are sort of givens. Like, we're assuming that if we're even here and the city is functional at all, that those things are happening. So we're not necessarily talking about the city engineers that are doing all those things, which are incredibly important, but unfortunately for cities, those things are just sort of taken for granted, right? It's an assumption that those things are there in order to have a city that's lovable. If you have those things, no one's going to love your city. They're just not going to hate it. So kind of building off of that idea. But co-creators are really this relatively small group of concerned citizens that are creating the experiences that most of us in our city are consuming, which is fine. That's the nature of a relationship with a city. We have these public spaces, we have beaches, we're using these things as residents of our city, as we should. But who's creating these experiences, again, that are building off of what exists already to make a city really, truly lovable? I think Shine is a really good example of what that can look like. I think Creative Mornings is a good example of what that can look like, right? It's these little things that help you feel connected to your city, that are building community, that are what make a city lovable. Yes, this is sort of what causes people to be in love with their cities. So I'll share a little personal story. I've actually never shared this before, but I don't know if you remember this mural from years ago. It's gone now. This is, I think, now engine number 9. But this is a mural by Sebastian Coolidge that was once at a juice works there. This was the first mural when I came to St. Pete and started coming downtown that caught my eye. And I share this because this idea of murals as sort of, building these emotional connections with our city. I saw this mural, and it was just enough for me to be like, that's cool. I wonder what else is around here. And that was the beginning, for me, of where I am now, which is kind of crazy to think about. But what happened from there was, at the time, I was a stay-at-home mom. I had my son, Jonah. He was like 9 months old. And I saw that mural, and then I started exploring other parts of the city, and I started seeing other murals, and I was like, it would be so cool to be able to take these photos, these portraits of my son, because he's so little and this art is so big. And I had never seen anything like that before. I grew up in a rural part of Michigan where there's not murals. And that juxtaposition of this little tiny baby and this massive art was just captivating for me. And this just happened to be 1 month before the first Shine Festival happened in 2015. So I was just kind of getting out into the streets, figuring out where all these murals were, taking pictures, and I started this little Instagram account called Jonah and the Mural. And then Shine happened. And that was September 2015, and I was blown away. I had never seen anything like that in my life. I'm like, this is the coolest thing. I can't believe this is happening in my city. And then I was super excited because then I had so many more murals to be able to photograph over the years. These are just some of them, but we went, from the time that he was 9 months old until maybe he was 4 or something. When he got old enough to be like, I hate this, Mom, don't drag me out to the streets, I was like, fair. So we stopped. But we do still take the same picture every single year at the same mural, and it's how I measure his growth every year. On the same date, we take that picture, but that's the only one he'll let me do anymore. But this was really the beginning for me, right? And so what happened was I saw Shine. I was blown away by what I saw, and I'm like, whatever that is, I have to be a part of it. And so by the second year of Shine, I would clear my schedule completely. I had my kids. I had a second baby in this time, too. So I had both my kids taken care of with their grandparents for the whole 10 days of the festival. And I would show up at Catherine Howard's house, who was the volunteer coordinator at that time. And I was like, I'm yours. Whatever you need, put me to work. I don't care what it is. I don't care how tiny it is. I don't care how awful it is. Put me to work. I love this. And then I would drive around with her, and we would deliver lunches and ice, and we'd do all the little things, and I would just pick her brain, who got these walls? Who picked these artists? Where did the money come from? Who funded this? And I just kept trying to absorb as much as I could because I just loved it. And then it turned out that by 2018, by the fourth, or after the third year of the festival, I was able to get hired by the Arts Alliance to run the festival, which is crazy. It's crazy. But it's been an absolutely life-changing and incredible experience for me to be able to do this work. And I just really believe in it, and I'm super passionate about it, and I love my city and my experience of my city because of this, and would advocate or sort of argue that Shine and myself and the people that I work with are co-creators, right? We're creating these experiences that other people are consuming that make a city lovable. So this is my easiest call to action ever, right? So in a room full of creatives, at a time in St. Pete that I think is really important. There's a lot of changes in St. Pete. There's a lot of growth in St. Pete. And I think for a lot of creatives especially, it can be kind of discouraging to see the way that the city's changing, and maybe feel like we don't really have control over a lot of these things, and it's super expensive to live here now, and there's things, right, that are discouraging. But what I've seen doing this work and being in this community is that every good, cool thing in St. Pete started with like grassroots artists who are just like, hey, I have an idea, let me try this thing. And you have these incredible things that make St. Pete so lovable because creative people were just like, let me try this, I have an idea. So that's really my call to action, is just like keep creating, because things are gonna come from that are gonna make this city really, really lovable and your experience of it really lovable. And I think that that's one of the most important things that we can do. And then my shameless plug again for Shine, October 11th to the 20th. Please come out in the streets, follow us online. Thank you.
I just want to know how we can get involved if you're an artist and want to
An amazing artist.
participate. Or I just want to know how we can get involved, whether it's volunteering or as an artist.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's multiple ways. I think we're always looking for artists, and I did like a panel thing last night about curating, and it was interesting because it was like a curator from the Dali, a curator from the Moria, and then me, and thinking through these different ways of how artists can get involved. And one of the things we talked about really is just like being in the places that you want to be, right? Showing up at the events, meeting people. You can submit your portfolio through our website. Everything gets reviewed by our curation team. So we have so few spots. Again, I was like so aware of this last night when we were talking about these museum or gallery exhibitions where they're curating maybe hundreds of artists throughout the course of a year. We have like 16 spots. So it's difficult, but we always kind of have our eye on people too, where there's like, if it doesn't work out one year, they're sort of like on our radar. So I think it always helps just to like get your work out there in front of people and see what happens, even if it doesn't happen right away. We also do have volunteer opportunities, right? So Elaine, you're sitting next to, is an amazing part of our Shine committee and helps so much. And there's a lot of things that need to be done day to day that aren't like the glorious things necessarily. They're not like hanging out with the artists, but they need to be done, and it's part of what makes Shine really special and amazing for the artists. But yeah, we can sign up through the website and start volunteering that way. We'll get you plugged in and also submit your portfolio for sure.
This is kind of a two-part question. One, do murals get replaced every year?
So no, they're only contracted to be up for 1 year, but after that it's up to the property owner. Most of the time they'll stay up for many years, but it just depends on the property owner at that point. But we really try to add new walls to the gallery every year and try not to cover up our own work unless it's super faded.
And then the second part is, if anything does get replaced, do you offer prints of previous murals to kind of memorialize them?
So it's a good question. We don't, and the reason why we don't is because of ownership, right? So when we work with an artist for Shine, the artists always maintain the rights to their work. We don't take that. Sometimes in a commission project that might be negotiated through a contract, but when it comes to Shine, the artist always maintains the rights to their work. So we don't reproduce it in any way. The property owner can't reproduce it in any way for any kind of profit. So we haven't. You can see like a catalog of all the murals we've done on our website. And then we are actually putting together a book that will celebrate the whole 10 years of Shine. Yeah, that'll be available. That'll come out next year, so we're going through that process now of getting everybody's permission so that we can include their mural in the book. Yeah.
How do we maintain the co-creators or the history of co-creators here in St. Pete? How do we represent the ones who've walked before us that have allowed us to enjoy this CreativeMornings and the Shine Festival?
It's a great question. I think there's a lot to that. I think, just being aware of the history of the arts in St. Pete particularly. There's a lot that's happened that I don't know that we've really captured in a formalized way. I think even when we talk about the history of Shine, depending on who you talk about, it's a totally different story, and I think that happens a lot with the 600 block and how a lot of the parts of St. Pete that I think are really special, how they came about. But I think understanding those histories as best we can helps to acknowledge the people that have come before us. I think it's also really important just to stay connected to each other, because I think especially as things start to feel really overwhelming in the city and feel like artists maybe don't have as much of a voice as we once did, it's really important to keep talking to each other so that we have that strength and then can be advocating on a larger level to continue to maintain what's made St. Pete really special. Because I think a lot of people are moving here and they just don't know, perhaps. So staying together, staying strong as a community, and then being able to go and advocate to city council, to city staff, anyone that has the power, developers, people that are here changing the city in a lot of ways, being able to be sort of loud with those people, I think goes a long way.
I'm assuming the medium is mostly paint on walls. Is there ever any thinking around expanding those mediums, maybe to projection, which actually opens up other sort of venues? I've been to other projection and mural festivals, such as Digital Graffiti, which uses projection and digital art that can project onto, let's say, I'm thinking the person sitting next to me has actually projected onto a water tower before, and it was very cool. But yeah, so that I don't know if that's ever been thought of, but yeah, it's super interesting.
Yeah, good question. We've done some projection at events, but not necessarily as a featured wall. I think one of the things that we wrestle with, I'll just speak for myself, I feel kind of old school or like a purist in some ways, where like I don't want it to be anything other than what it is. Maybe that's limiting to its growth. I don't know. But we do get a lot of requests for people wanting to do other things, or like adding a music festival piece of it, or adding this, or making it a performance art thing, or whatever. And none of those things are bad. It's just not what Shine is, I think. And I think I feel super protective of giving mural artists a space just once a year where they really get to do what they do and have that be recognized. And I think there's space at events and things like that to include projection and do other things that might bring in other elements to it. But as a whole, I kind of just love the art form sort of as it is.
Can you talk more about your approach to curation? How do you choose who you include in the festival, and how do you choose who you exclude from the festival? I just want to hear more about that process.
Sure. Yeah, so the curation process, like I mentioned, it's difficult because we have so few spots that we're looking to fill and so many incredible artists to look at. I think the biggest thing that we've tried to prioritize over the years is diversity, and really making sure that we're being responsible in public spaces, right? Like, it's different than curating in a gallery or a museum or a place that might be private, that you can do different things and have a little bit more, flexibility in what you can show. But there's a certain responsibility to working in a public space, and I think we're really sensitive to that, and making sure we're working with artists that we feel understand that responsibility and are respectful of it. Looking at artists that have an established voice and a message in their work too, that there's a lot of artists that are incredible artists that may not quite be ready, to be a part of Shine, and that's okay. I think, again, like I said, we've kept our eye on people sometimes for years, and so there's a lot that goes into it, and I think we're looking to, within each year, to kind of feel like we have a comprehensive, diverse lineup, not only in their artistic styles, but in their backgrounds and what they represent as individuals, but then also that within the larger collection of work that we've produced over the past 10 years. So kind of wanting to always bring in new voices as best as we can.
So I'm going to just make a plug for volunteers. How many of you have seen the murals around St. Pete? Just about everybody, right? Well, that just doesn't happen by artists alone, although they're central to the whole process, of course. But there's a lot of logistics that have to happen. So if you're not inclined to pick up a paintbrush or a spray can, the opportunity to be a part of Shine and participate gives you a chance to meet the artist, get involved, to learn about what inspires them, where they come from, how they see the world. And for me, it's really enriched my creative process, being able to kind of understand the background and what the artist's intention was, and really appreciate the medium. So, if you're not a paintbrusher or spray canner, there's a lot of chance to really have a really, really rich experience through this.
Thanks, Elaine. Absolutely.
Absolutely. We're a volunteer-run event, so we get it. Plug the volunteers. I have a question as well, and then you, Jesse. What do you see as the next 10 years of Shine?
Oof, that's a question. I think that St. Pete, in many ways, because of Shine, has sort of been established as a mural city. I think people know us that way. I think that there's also a lot of room to grow what we're doing. I think there's a lot of educational opportunities that we haven't quite been able to hit yet just because of really a lack of bandwidth. But we're always building, actually we're in the process of building an exciting partnership now with Pinellas County Schools, which I think could be a really amazing evolution of what happens for Shine in the future. Being able to kind of raise up more mural artists and just have that be part of an education for school-age kids. I think that's definitely a part of it. I think, as St. Pete grows, it's interesting because the property ownership has changed hands a lot, really, since COVID, and that's created some issues that aren't impossible to overcome, but just certainly more difficult to get by on when a lot of the property owners don't live in St. Pete anymore. They're not as connected to the local culture, and so you're kind of like in an uphill battle again, trying to validate what we're doing and why we're doing it to people that may not be as concerned about it. I think that does create the opportunity, though, to move to other spaces of St. Pete. There's a lot of other neighborhoods and places that we haven't really worked in yet, mostly for logistic reasons. But I think there's a lot of opportunity for it to grow and shift and change. But I don't know. We'll see. Yeah.
TBD. Jesse?
You stole my question. Oh, no, but I'm just kidding. I wanted to know more about kind of the challenges in the changing of, a lot of people are coming in and buying up downtown properties, and what the difference of the relationship is between the people that have invested a lot in our community already versus noobs. So you kind of covered that, which was great. But I did just want to put a plug in to what Elaine said, that when I don't get to volunteer much, but when I do, what I'm always amazed about with Shine is that these artists, like some of them are internationally renowned artists that do this all year round in all these major cities, and they come to St. Pete, and when you get to meet them and talk with them, it's super cool, obviously, because they're awesome. But what I love to hear about them is how much they love our city and how well they're taken care of. And while we might not be able to pay them as much as a huge city that's hosting them, I mean, y'all take such good care of them. And what is really fun about volunteering, if you're interested, is that hospitality bit. Artists don't get a lot of perks, you know what I mean? So for them to come to our city and be so well taken care of and so well fed and so looked after is something that I think Shine should be incredibly proud of, because they go to these huge international festivals and they love coming here. So thank you.
Yeah,
I didn't have a question.
Yeah. I love it.
I'm really excited that you have a connection with Pinellas County Schools now. I'm curious, what would be your small elevator pitch to a elementary or so aged child to help them really grasp the concept of why this is important?
Earlier this school year, I did the Great American Teach-In at my kid's school, and got to talk to a whole bunch of second graders and third graders about what I do, and it was so amazing because, first of all, it was encouraging because so many of them knew about graffiti, more so about murals, but they knew about graffiti, and it was awesome because they were like, oh yeah, we know about that. That's where you get the spray cans and you go out in the streets, and they knew all about it, and I was like, yes, that's amazing. But I think in some ways kids kind of get the excitement of it in a way that maybe adults don't even understand. I don't know how I would totally put that in an elevator pitch, but I think for me it's something about creative freedom, right? There's something about the joy of creating, and especially when you can do it in a public space that's sort of shared with other people. There's something really beautiful about that. I think that's my answer, the joy of creating.